The gospel reading is Luke 1:14, verses 25 through 33. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able, with 10,000 men, to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation, while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples."
As we start the school year, and I know I brought this up for the last 3 weeks, but I'm married to a teacher. And so it feels like since the beginning of August that we've been about to start school. I know that if you're a teacher out there, you feel that. So here we are, we finally started, and I'm always amazed at how far June feels from September. It's only, 10 months, but man, it feels like it's a long ways away when you start. And a lot can happen in that time, even in college. And I've been thinking of some of the new college students. The time from the beginning of the semester to the time of the end of the semester, from late August to the middle of December, feels like a long time. And when I was going to school, every year I remember thinking, can I do it? It's a long time to the end of the year. And anyone who has any kind of established routine can feel that way when a new year begins. I remember I was visiting somebody in a nursing home, and she said to me, "I've been here for 7 years, and I keep thinking year after year, why am I still here?" But anybody can feel that way when they look at their routine. Am I going to make it another year? Whether it's a job or raising a child, even living life. Depending on what you're facing, you may ask yourself the question, can I do it? Can I really do it? Can I pull this off? And it's a good question to ask. It's one that Jesus asks through the parables that he tells and the very forceful metaphors he uses in today's gospel reading. Can you finish what you start? So let's take a look right away at Luke chapter 14. First few verses, starting with verse 25, it says that large crowds were traveling with Jesus. And turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." That's a haymaker, isn't it? Ouch. Why would Jesus do that? Why would he say that? Hate is such a strong word. We have all these hate groups that are popping up. These groups scare me. I don't know how you feel about them, but the word hate makes me nervous. What do you think of when you hear Jesus use that word? Especially paired with hating father and mother, wife and children, hating brothers and sisters, even hating your own life. Should cause you to ask, all right, what are you doing, Jesus? In the mention of the cross itself, we always think of, anytime we see the word cross in the Bible, in the New Testament, we always think of it in terms of Jesus' death on the cross, right? But the kind of cross that Jesus is talking about is not the specific one that he will die on in the future. It's the everyday one that the Romans used to kill off all those who were opposed to their rule. Anyone who wasn't a Roman citizen that committed crimes against the Roman Empire got made an example of by being killed on a cross in a public place. Just think about how terrifying that would be to see a friend or a neighbor hung up as an example of what would happen to somebody who was opposed to Roman rule. That's the kind of thing that the people saw in Jesus' day. They're not used to this language, but they understand it in a more vivid way than we do. They were people who lived with a sense of dread, terrified of breaking the religious laws and falling afoul of God. They're also, on the other hand, terrified of breaking Roman law and falling afoul of earthly authority. No wonder that the people lived such short lives. Stress shortens your life dramatically. And if you think you are going to be killed for any reason from day to day, I would imagine your life was a very short grind. Now Jesus says you've got to be willing to carry your own life in your hands. Is that too strong for you? Well, let's take a closer look and see maybe what Jesus is doing. Verse 25, first of all, tells us that large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Jesus is enjoying some popularity, enough that all kinds of people were willing to follow him wherever he went. And it's almost like here that he decides to get rid of them. He doesn't tell them to go home, though. Instead, he sets the bar really high on who he actually wants to follow him. Jesus is saying he only wants people who have no other loyalties than to him. And that sounds unfair. How is anyone really supposed to do that? But on the other hand, if we take this in another sense, what he's doing is he's telling the people to put away their fear. He says, don't fear all the relational loyalties and entanglements that you're in. Because in many ways, the religious laws protected all those family loyalties and entanglements. Family was really important, not in the sense of loving your family. All of us, we love our families. But it was bigger than that in Jesus' day. It was about being loyal to them in such a way that you gave up all your other ambitions. Jesus is telling them that it will be too hard for them to follow if they try to carry all that family loyalty with them. So for some in the crowd, he's setting them free. They're like, oh yeah, I can just put this behind me. I'm not the oldest son anyway. I might as well. I've got nothing to lose, right? But in other ways, for most of the crowd, this will just be too difficult for them to carry on. They can't break all those loyalties and follow Jesus freely. And then in carrying their own cross, Jesus is also saying to them they can't follow him if they fear the Romans. They can't follow him if they fear losing their lives. He's calling them to a higher authority, a higher kind of loyalty, higher than the law of Moses, higher than the authority of the Roman legions. It's a lesson that for many Christians, they would learn the difficult way in the first century. They would give their lives for their faith. They would put their loyalty to Jesus above their loyalty to Caesar. And again, for some of the crowd, he's setting them free. I mean, I don't have to worry about all this stuff, even if I get killed for it. They're probably going to kill me anyway, so why don't I just go with you, Jesus? For some, he's setting them free. Well, he knows, once again, that for most people, this kind of demand is just too difficult. So who is he making demands of? He's making demands of the largest crowds of his ministry. It's very different from our thinking, right? Numbers are good. Chasing people away is bad. We should keep them at all costs. And I'm sure his disciples were feeling really good about all this newfound popularity. Finally, we're coming into this kingdom, Jesus, that you're going to establish, and we're going to get all these people behind us, and we're going to form some kind of army and kick out the Romans. It's going to be great. And remember John Lennon, at the height of Beatlemania, what did he say? Famously stuck his foot in his mouth and he said, "We're bigger than Jesus." A lot of Christians didn't think that was very funny. Didn't give him much of a break. But I will tell you, if you fast forward more than 50 years from today, you can see that in many ways, entertainment culture really has overtaken religious culture. And so I wonder if his disciples, Jesus' disciples, were saying similarly foolish things. Hey, look at this, Jesus. We're bigger than Caesar. Hey, look at this, Jesus. We're bigger than the temple. Jesus wants to make it very clear to both them and also to us who are reading this morning that he's not running a popularity contest against anyone. He's not trying to be more popular than someone or something else. He's not combing through the latest polling data to see if his message is resonating. He's not swiping through social media to see if he's trending. It's because Jesus cares about the quality of his followers and not the quantity of his followers. Because a few faithful followers are better than a crowd of fickle ones. What he wants is he just wants people to follow him on his terms instead of theirs. And so he says, as we end this passage in verse 33, in the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. He needs people who can follow him, not just to the cross, but through the cross, to the promise of the other side. Let's not forget that even for his closest disciples, it was hard for them to follow Jesus to that point. And it was even harder for them to get to the other side and believe what had happened to Jesus. Jesus' words proved true. By the time he was put on trial, guess what happened? Hardly any of those people that were with him in the crowd that day were still there. But the ones who were there, who followed him from that point on, through his trial, through his crucifixion, and around to the other side, to his resurrection, got to see a miracle. They got to understand God's plan. And so they got to see the promise of the resurrection fulfilled. Can you start what you finish? That's the big question. And that's one of the big challenges in the Christian faith. Everyone starts with good intentions, but not everyone finishes. Not everybody sticks around for the long term, because the truth is we come to Jesus with all kinds of different motivations. And the Bible challenges us that following Jesus is a lifelong commitment. There are many times where it's not easy. There are times when we all go through periods of disillusionment, personally. There are times when we get disillusioned with the church. But can we see things through to the other side? Can we live through it to see a better day? And more importantly, can we follow Jesus through it to see a better day? That's the kind of long-term view that's written into the pages of the Bible. Whether it's a pattern like I talked about last week, where we remember the past, we live in the present, and we look forward to its fulfillment in the future. Or whether it's the approach that the Bible takes so often in speaking about our lives, lifelong is its assumption. Beyond lifelong, eternal. Just look at the words of our Psalter today from Psalm 139, verses 1 and 16. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. It's in God's nature to know us and to know everything about us. It's in God's nature to know our beginning, our lives, and our end. And so, again, it's not just a long view, but it's an eternal view of the process of living and believing and following. Can you live through it? Can you live to the cross and around to the other side? Can you make the commitment to Jesus and stick with it? Living through experiences, both good and bad, to shape us into what he wants us to be. If we commit our lives to Jesus Christ, we'll be able to see the things that we go through as things that God can use to shape us. Much like the imagery we read from our passage in Jeremiah. It's one of the most popular passages in the Bible. Jeremiah, prompted by God, goes down to watch a potter work at his wheel. And he watches the potter as his work goes both good and bad, shaping his work into what he wants to make. to a final product. And God says this to Jeremiah as he watches. Can I not do with you, Israel, as this potter does? Like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, Israel. If at any time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be uprooted and torn down and destroyed, and if that nation I warn repents of its evil, then I will relent and not inflict on it disaster that I have planned. And if at that time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be built up and planted, and if it does evil in my sight, and does not obey me, then I will reconsider the good that I have intended for it. Through this imagery of a potter shaping a vessel, God demands the loyalty of the people. So I can mold you for good here, but you kind of make your choice. Follow me, follow my ways, live through it with me. Don't just make me part of your life, but make me all of your life. Even when it's complicated, even when it's hard to do, even when you get disillusioned. Don't forget who I am. Don't forget my ways, because I'm shaping you for a good purpose and not for evil. So stick with me right through to the end. Now, obviously, the imagery breaks down a little, right? The clay on the potter's wheel doesn't have a personality. The clay isn't going to jump off the wheel randomly through it. I think the potter would have been shocked if something like that happened. But the bigger point is that God tells the people that if they can stay on the wheel, and if they can bear up under that molding and shaping process, be willing to do that, then He's going to shape them into something great. If you stay on the wheel, even through the hardest parts, God is going to shape you into His perfect plan. Now, oftentimes we miss out because we want to avoid paying a price. Usually paying a price reaps a higher reward in the end. I was sitting in a seminar a few years ago about how to build a successful ministry and how to just keep your church going forward. And really it's about making critical decisions at the right times and then fully pursuing it. In that way, it's not unlike running a business. When you make a decision and it feels like you're jumping on a roller coaster, that's probably the right decision. Because if we follow Jesus' teaching here, risking something is a recognition of what's at stake. Because following Jesus is not easy. If it feels easy, then you're probably not really on board all the way. But it's not just enough to stay on the wheel through it. Because we need to do so with an open spirit, open to being shaped. Because in order for that clay to be moldable, it has to be soft, right? It has to be ready. The potter doesn't put a brick on the wheel and start working on that, right? That would be ridiculous. The brick already has a finished shape. It's been fired. It has the only shape it's ever going to have. The only way you can shape it again is to what? Smash it up and to grind it back into dust and then add water to it, make it into clay again. I think a lot of Christians and a lot of churches feel like they're more like a brick than a piece of clay. And as a result, as the world changes, they become more risk-averse, they end up getting smashed into the dust by factors beyond their control. It's not that the gospel has changed. It's that the church has stopped taking risks to put it out there for people and to live it for people. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live like my life is already finished. But to be that soft piece of clay and not to be a brick on the wheel, you need to cultivate an openness to God working in you. We're not done until God says we're done. We don't get to make that decision. And God doesn't say that we're done until when?
We're done.
Until this life is over. So Jesus says, leave your old allegiances behind. God's word to Jeremiah says, take up your cross. Join Jesus on the road. Not just for today or tomorrow, but for life. Through life. Around to the other side, to the fulfillment of your life in eternity. Jesus didn't say those tough words because He didn't like the crowds. He didn't say them because He didn't want people following Him. And He didn't say it because life on the road is scary. Because for the most part, even as we get through those difficult things, life on the road with Jesus is good. Life on the road with Jesus is real freedom. Following Jesus should mean that we are free from all the things that entangle us and hold us back. Sometimes to get to those really good places, we need to stay on the road with Jesus and face hardship and head on. There was a recent death in the national park at the Half Dome in refresh my memory. Yosemite. And maybe you heard about that. A person fell 500 feet. It's a particular place where there's these cables on stanchions, and you have to just hand over hand walk up. But it gets pretty steep up toward the top. Some people get tired and they let go, forgetting that they need to hang on. Sometimes we just need to follow the course and hang on when things get really difficult. Because when you get up to the top there, it's a view like no other. The reward is great. But again, the person, when this happened, let go of those cables and fell 500 feet. Real freedom is following the road with Jesus. Most people live with lost dreams of what might have been. Churches live like that too. Christians live like that too. Let's not be one of them. But let's take some risks with Jesus on the road this year. Let's let Him shape us into our very best congregation, our very best selves. What's your ceiling? Anybody know? What's your ceiling? What's our ceiling as a church? It's not that leaky one out in the hallway. The truth is that you don't know, and I don't know, what our ceiling is. But we should spend some more time thinking about, praying about how to reach it. Because I think if we do, we'll come to the other side of this year, and we'll say that it's worth it. We'll see some things that we haven't seen before. Amp up your life and get on the road with Jesus. Because it might feel risky, but I can tell you this. If you keep following through even the difficult stuff, it's not as risky as it seems. Jesus knows what He's doing. You got to trust Him. That's what, faith is. Live your faith like you have faith. Trust Him. You will get to the other side because He will get you there.